I've had that same thought this week.
Yeah.
This week I was just like, I think if I really want to do this, I'm going to have to pretty much abandon the other stuff. And pretty much on my business cards and even I had another photographer friend. I asked them, I was just like, hey, I've got this event coming up where I'm going to need to buy some prints. Well, what do you think my best images are? And they straight up were like, you just need to do the cosplay stuff.
Yeah.
It's time for the Creative Difference Podcast with your host, Jason the Photillustrator. Now, let's get jiggy with it.
And what is up, you guys? I'm Jason Ulsrud, the Photillustrator, and you're listening to episode 6 of the Creative Difference Podcast, where it's all about creating awesome stuff that makes a difference. Now, today I have an amazing guest on the show. This guy, you will love his work. I guarantee it. If you are anybody who loves to do like superhero stuff or that illustrative, maybe kind of cosplay kind of work, this guy is your guy. I'm telling you, he is spectacular. I don't use that word much, but today I'm using it because this guy is spectacular, and it's none other than Ryan Sims from Ryan Sims Photography. All right, so today on this podcast, we're going to be talking about what inspired him to become a composite photographer and digital artist. That's really cool. Also, we're going to talk about how he creates some of his special effects. So if you want a creative way to create some of these special effects, the fire and the sparks and all that kind of stuff, we get into that just a little bit here on this podcast. And also, we get into starting or how to get started as a cosplay artist. All right. And really, this applies to anybody. If you are trying to be an artist or a photographer or creative photographer, this applies to you. So you definitely want to stay tuned for that. Now, you can get all the show notes. You can see some of Ryan's work over at Photillustrator.com/episode 006. So this is going to be an awesome interview. Make sure you stay tuned. But first, we got to get into a couple of little details here before we get started. First, the big question of the day is what inspires you, right? Because to make a difference in the world, to make a difference even in one person's world, your work has to be inspiring, and it has to come from a place of inspiration. So what inspires you? There's so many people out there just copying other photographers or copying other artists from no place of inspiration, and their work is not inspiring. So I want to know today from you, what inspires you? You can answer that question over at Photillustrator.com/episode 006. Now, next week, I have an awesome episode. I can't wait for this episode because I'm going to talk about the struggles of my creative mind. All right. So I'm going to get into some of my struggles as a creative person and trying to create a business out of being creative. All right. And that's going to be a super cool episode. If you are at all want to create a business out of being creative, that's an episode you might want to tune into. Now, I think a week ago, it's actually been a couple weeks, but a week ago, I posted on the last podcast episode on episode 005 that I had a bike accident, and it was a pretty significant one, so much so that it crushed my bike, my carbon fiber bike. And I just want to let you guys know that I'm okay. Other than my ego was hurt a little bit, but I'm okay. But I did go out and buy a new bike. If you want to see that new bike, I'll leave that in the show notes as well. But I'm back to riding about 200 plus miles a week. All right. So that's pretty cool, I think. I think Larry Adkins had commented on that last podcast that I'm sure you're back up and rocking, or however he said it, but you're back up and going. That is true. I didn't wait. I went out and got a bike, I think maybe even the next day. I can't remember exactly. It might have been the next day or the day after. Got a new bike and got back on it and started going at it. All right. So that's kind of the same thing with our photography, right? So when we get out there and we create an image and it doesn't get the response that we want, we just got to get back on, create another one and go. And eventually this stuff will start working out. So see how cycling can be a educational tool for life and for creativity? That's pretty cool. All right, so before we get started here, follow me on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube at Photillustrator. Also, please just take a minute. It just takes a minute to go over to iTunes and leave a review for this show. The only way that we're really going to make a difference in photography, in the world of creativity, is by getting more people connected to this show, because this is the only show. I actually, I went out there when I'm trying to come up with the name, I went out there and typed in the creative difference. There's nobody talking about the creative difference, the difference, right? Being different. And that's what this show is all about. When you leave your review on iTunes, it helps more creative people, more photographers connect to this information. All right, so without further ado, I think it's time to make a difference with Ryan Sims. And welcome to the show, Ryan Sims. What's happening, my friend?
Oh, not a whole lot, man. I'm just glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I connected with you, or really kind of found you, or discovered you, I should say, over Facebook and through a post that you had posted on, or Auntie had posted on, about you guys connecting over Skype. And I took a look at your work and I thought, damn, this stuff is awesome. I got to get you onto the podcast here, onto the Make Awesome Pictures podcast, because that's exactly what you do, is make awesome pictures. So for our listeners, why don't you kind of tell them who you are and where you're at today, and kind of the images that you create?
Oh man, where do I start?
Not when you were born.
I was born. Yes, I come from my mother. No, I am from Laurel, Mississippi, originally. I grew up on comic books, and I've always been a huge nerd. I was never really into sports or anything like that. My brother, did his thing and I did my thing, and we were usually polar opposites. But one thing we did have in common was comics, and we loved to draw. And so I remember, oh man, we're going way back now. I remember we used to go to this place called the Yogurt Parlor, right? And so we would get ice cream there. And right next door to the Yogurt Parlor was this place called Dexter's Cards and Comics. And so back when comics were like, I don't know, like cents. And Cokes, by the way, they were like 25, 50 cents. But
you're not that old.
No, well, I'm 32. So, yeah, So I grew up on Spider-Man, X-Men, Superman, Batman, Spawn. Always loved those comics, and just visually. Of course, I would buy them just to look at all the pictures, because I'm like, these are so cool. I want to recreate them. I want to draw them.
Right.
Just kind of what I do with my photography now. But yeah, so, and my brother could always just draw things out of his head, and I've always marveled at that, but I always had to look at things. And I feel like that's probably one of the reasons why I'm in photography too, is because I like to look at things and manipulate those images and whatnot. That and Spider-Man's always been my favorite superhero, and he's a photographer. So, just kind of led into that. But no, so when I was 18 years old, my now wife, we were both wanting to pursue a career in music. And, we both sang, we both wrote music and whatnot. And so we came to Nashville, which is where we are now, to Nashville, Tennessee to pursue that. And along the way, I started going to school for digital entertainment and game designs, because I'm a huge gamer. And so I was going to make video games.
Nice.
And I remember my first class that I took was visual design theory. And that is where I fell in love with Photoshop.
Really?
Yeah. And so, and I just remember all the projects that we had to do. It's like, create this like magazine cover or do this. And I'm like over here trying to figure out, how do I make a lightsaber? How do I do something cool, like, in Photoshop to do this? And so I wound up getting jobs that I felt like would help my graphic design. And what really wound up happening was, the graphic design wound up helping my photography.
Right.
So I started off working at like Portrait Innovations, just like photographing babies and families and stuff like that. And really just getting accustomed to holding a camera and pressing the button.
That's funny.
I got really good at pressing the button. and capturing the moment. But then from there, I worked at other places. I worked at senior photography studios like Life Touch. Well, I think it's Prestige Portraits now, but doing like seniors in high school and other things. And that's where I kind of learned a little bit more about camera settings and lighting and composition, things like that. And so that really kind of grew, my love and passion for that. I'm like, hey, I'm actually, I think, pretty good at this, and maybe I could, do this eventually. And so yeah, everything that I've learned as far as camera photography wise has been on the job type stuff. I didn't really go to school for it other than like Photoshop and stuff like that. Learned that in school. But yeah, after a while, I was just like, man, like there are just things in my head that I want to create, and I've got a little bit of the knowledge now, so let's start doing that. You know what I mean? And just over the years, it's just kind of there have been certain photographers that I really, really like, and I'm like, I want to know what that person knows.
Right.
And so if they had like a tutorial online or something that I could buy, because this person's work is clearly good enough to buy, so I want to know what they know. And really, it's just been a learning experience ever since. Like I'm still learning. Photoshop is such an in-depth program, right. And it's a beautiful thing. I've always felt like the slogan for Photoshop should be like the only limitation is your imagination.
There you go.
Or something like that.
There you go.
Because you can do anything in it, and right. And so yeah, I mean that's kind of gives you an idea of why I do what I do and why I like superheroes so much.
Yeah. Well, it's funny you were talking about superheroes, and I had purchased this book, which is
nice.
Marvelosity. I don't know. I really purchased it because I like the way they do the coloring in it and the illustrating part of it. And in my composites, I always try to really kind of get better at the illustrating part of it because I really love that look. And so there's nothing better than a comic, really a good art, comic to do that or to be inspired from.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
So I'm curious then where you are today, because I know our listeners are going to go and they're going to check out your website and they're going to see how awesome your work is. But how long has it taken you to get from point one to where you are today and creating, the awesome images that you are?
Well, man, how far back do I need to go? It's taken a while, and I'm personally still not where I would like to be. It's almost like you don't really know until you see it. And you're like, oh, that's really good. How can I step it up from there? But yeah, I'm 32 years old, and I think I started doing this when I was maybe, I don't know. I think I started that portrait innovation shop when I was like maybe 23 or 24.
Okay.
And I, shortly started learning about Photoshop after that. So we'll say 25. So it's been a good 7-8 years.
Okay.
Just of kind of tinkering around with certain images. And I used to think it was just so cool just to make my eyes really big, right. Really small with the liquefy tool. I'm just like, oh man, this is so cool. Look at what I've done.
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, you learn a little bit, each time you use it. And even now, if I'm doing something, comic book related or video game related or something like that, I'll see something. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I've never done that before. How do I do that? Knowing the things that I know, how can I use those things maybe in a new way to create this effect? Or, where can I go to learn how to do this? Because, I feel like you can never stop learning. So it's been the better part of a decade. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it's, anything worth doing is worth doing right. And it's going to take time. And so yeah.
So I'm curious then, would you consider yourself to be to pick up Photoshop very quickly, or has it been easy for you, or has it been really hard for you to pick it up and transform from basically pushing a button on a camera to making the awesome pictures you do?
Well, I think now, because I've got this, experience built up, I by no means know everything, and especially not about Photoshop. But yeah, I think now I've gotten to a point to where if there's a concept that I have in my head, whether through drawing it out or whether through, putting together like a Pinterest board or something, or even if we're going based off like, a recreation of a comic book cover or something like that, I can normally look at it and be like, okay, so the light's here, this is here, they've got these effects. All right, I know how to do all that stuff. Let me just put all the pieces together, get all of the material that I need to create this effect. Do I want to create this effect in Photoshop, or do I actually want to photograph something and use that as the effect?
Gotcha.
I remember for a Spider-Man image that we did for Paul C. Buff, I remember I had my father-in-law go outside at night, and he had some sawdust, and we created a fire in the backyard. He threw some sawdust into the fire, and it created these awesome embers.
Really?
Fire embers. And I'm just like, and because it was outside and it was pitch black outside, I could just take the fire, swap it to screen. Screen mode, the blending mode screen in Photoshop. Takes all the black out and it's just the fire.
Right.
And so that was me using a picture to create that effect instead of actually having to learn a new effect. So there's ways, if you know the program well enough, ways around to, to cheat, I guess, ways around to get the certain effect that you want.
Well, then I'm curious, since you're talking about taking your own pictures, do you use all your own images or do you use stock images as well?
Oh, I definitely use stock images, just because, for example, like I think there was one of Pirates of the Caribbean. It's not every day that I'm just out at the beach in Tennessee.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it really depends on the image. Each image has its own set of criteria and its own set of problems. So you've got to try to figure it out. But yeah, if I can get away with going down the street or going wherever I need to go to create my own stock images, I definitely think that's good because, if I'm going to photograph the subject wide angle, and I can get a background that's wide angle with the same lens, the same everything, the same lighting, then I'm going to do it that way because I know ultimately that's going to be a better image.
Yeah.
But it doesn't always work out that way.
Right. Right.
You need to go to the ocean or you need to go to space or wherever the stock images are, so
for your stuff. Yes. I can see how you need stock images for that. For me, I always try to avoid using any stock images if at all possible, just because for some reason for me, I feel like I'm not like I don't know. I'm disrespecting the art if I use somebody else's image for some reason. I know that's probably not a legitimate reason, but that's just how I feel. So I always try to use my own images if I can. There's on occasion where I have to use somebody else's image if it's a logo or something like that we put into our images. But I can definitely see if you're doing outer space type of stuff.
Yeah, it's like, let me just go get my my space rocket and photograph the Earth that I need in this shot. Yeah.
Well, now with Jeff Bezos, it's easy to get up there and do that. So I'm curious then, since we're talking about cosplay, and I'm very interested in this cosplay. I've wanted to do it in the past myself, although I don't think I'd ever be really good at it because I don't really see the world that way. I just think it's really cool. But I'm always curious, how do you turn that into a career or into a job, or where are you at today in your journey of making this a job or a career?
Sure. So right now, just going to give you some realism in my life. My wife, my beautiful, awesome wife, who I'm sure is listening to this right now, just soaking up all the things that I'm saying about how wonderful she is. We just had our third child.
Nice. Congrats.
So, we have, thank you. We have 2 boys and we have a beautiful little girl now. And so we are just happy and blessed and,
Cool.
But, so right now she is actually, in pharmacy school. Well, not at this moment. She actually took, a couple months off because, just had a baby. So right now I'm the sole provider. So I actually have a 9 to 5 that I work Monday through Friday to help out benefits, whatnot. So I do that.
And what are you doing?
I am working at Cardinal Health. It's a third-party logistics, medical field type stuff.
Gotcha.
I order drugs for pharmacies. That's what I do.
Okay.
I'm a legal drug dealer is what I am.
Right.
So, and it's funny because she's actually a pharmacy tech studying to be, a pharmacist and whatnot. And so it presents its own set of challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention the fact that she's, a mommy of 3 now. And so she's got those challenges of her own, but man, she's doing so good. She's
That's
so smart, awesome. And I love her to death. She made my website. So
very good.
Yeah. But yeah, so I do that to help out the family. And then I also do this on the side for some extra, supplemental cash. And I also just do it because I love to do it. I mean, like I could never get another like on social media. I could never get another dollar doing this. I would still do it just for the joy of doing it. I love to do it. It's fun.
That's awesome. And I can tell by just, talking to you that you love doing it. So I'm curious then, where are you getting your work for this cause? Is it consumer market, or is it a commercial market that you're getting work from?
So right now, I mean, it's definitely more, consumer based, but I'm kind of getting involved in some of these, or I'm planning to get involved in some of these cons that are coming up. I would love to go to Comic-Con. Man, I would love to go to Comic-Con.
I bet.
It would just field day.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to give you a brief history of that, I literally was just looking for fun things to photograph. And I had heard of this local Batman and Wonder Woman married couple that kind of live in my area, and they do cosplay and go to charity events and whatnot. And I was like, I've got to get these people over to my house. I've got to meet them. I've got to photograph them. And probably at the time they're just like, okay, yeah, whatever. This guy, he might be a creep. I don't know. I don't know what they thought at the time. I don't know if I want to know what they thought, but I was just like, man, I would love to photograph you guys. I want to have you over. I just want to meet you, talk with you, get to know you a little bit. And then I would love just to photograph you guys, because I really think that I could do an awesome job, making some really cool cinematic images for you. And I think that would help you at the cons that you go to and whatnot. And so, so it worked out. This Adam and Shannon Prince are their names. It's funny that her last name is Prince, because Diana Prince, Wonder Woman. But anyway, and then Adam, like Adam West, Batman. So,
right.
But yeah,
you are a geek.
I know, I really am. I can't help it. I can't hide it. But yeah, they came over, and man, it just I don't know if they were expecting it, because I don't know if they'd ever seen any of the stuff I'd done before, but man, they were blown away. And of course I was just blown away at their willingness to participate. And it gets challenging every now and then to hold a certain pose for a long time, and so man, they were great. We had a great time, and really just from that one photo shoot, it was very, very well received, and I got a lot of, reception from that. And so really from that one photo shoot of just Batman and Wonder Woman, and started pumping those images out, I had people contacting me like, hey, we do this, we do Hellboy and Liz, or we do, Jack Sparrow, or even some more people who do Batman and whatnot, and Spider-Man. And so, and it's just so funny, because there's just one photo shoot, and all of a sudden it's like I became a cosplay photographer, which, I love that. I think that's great. I do other work as well. I mean, I do senior portraits, and I do just, normal portrait sessions and headshots and weddings and stuff like that. But if I'm being totally honest, this is the kind of stuff that I love to do, and I would love to do just that. So if anything ever presents itself, then I'll do it, because, it pays money, but if I'm being honest, but yeah, I love to create Photoshop composites. I think that's definitely where my heart is. It's definitely where my strengths are. Yeah. Because as there aren't that many people in the world that do it,
Right.
And so that's kind of the story of how I got involved in the cosplay world is
Nice.
from this Batman and Wonder Woman couple.
That's awesome, though. I love that story. So, you kind of touched on the fact that you do other things and you have those on your website. And, for me, when I was starting out doing what I do, I kind of struggled with, should I put other type of, like, I wanted to do editorial, portraits and some other type of portraits and that kind of thing. And it wasn't until I took all of that crap off and I just said, nope, this is what I'm doing. I planted my flag. That's when things started to take off for me. And so that's a little insight for you.
I've had that same thought this week.
Yeah.
This week I was just like, I think if I really want to do this, I'm going to have to pretty much abandon the other stuff. And pretty much on my business cards and even I had another photographer friend. I asked them, I was just like, hey, I've got this event coming up where I'm going to need to buy some prints. Well, what do you think my best images are? And they straight up were like, you just need to do the cosplay stuff.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, even when you take those other images off and you just have your cosplay, like for me, I still, not so much anymore, but back in the beginning, I was still getting some work, from clients that I have doing the family portraits I do. They would have other stuff that they'd ask me if I wanted to do it. And I would say yes, because of course it's money. And most of the time it's pretty easy money. So I would say yes. But that was just kind of because they were already a client.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know that you'll not get work doing other stuff if you still want it. But I think if you took it off, and people see that, that's who you are. You're the cosplay, awesome, making awesome pictures dude. And you are. It's like, it's almost like the other stuff kind of dilutes it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like if you just went with that, you would just rock.
I totally agree, man. I really do. And it's funny that you mentioned that because I've literally been thinking about that this week. And so I'm definitely going to start pursuing that.
That's awesome.
More hardcore now.
That's awesome.
And I would definitely love to, over time, I would love to get involved, like maybe in some commercial or, advertising stuff that still involves like the Photoshop compositing.
Yeah, dude, I can see you doing movie posters and comic book covers and whatever. I mean, so many different opportunities that you have doing what you do. It's just finding, the doors to kick open to do it, right? That's the challenge that you're going to have.
For sure.
Yeah. And it may not be as big of a challenge. I mean, once you start getting to know all these people that are in that cosplay world, they probably have connections too. It's just a matter of really sitting down and asking them what kind of connections that could help you, get further and that type of thing. So I think you're in a perfect spot there. So I want to touch base a little bit because I had one question on your image, especially the Batman image, the one that's kind of close up. His eyes are so flippin' sharp. I mean, it's not even funny. It's like, how in the hell do you get it that sharp?
Oh man. I think that was just a Photoshop action.
Was it?
No. I think it was like I think a friend of mine gave me like a greater than Gatsby, which isn't for that type of photography at all.
Yeah.
It's more towards like I think like newborns and weddings and stuff like that. But there was one setting on there that was like for iris sharpening.
Yeah.
And I ran it, and I think it may have been like something simple like I could run the action and find out. But like a high pass filter and maybe plus something else.
Yeah.
And just really making it pop and really getting the details of the eyes to be sharp.
Well, I was thinking either you're shooting with an 8x10 camera or it's got to be some Photoshop thing you're doing. I don't know. Like for my images, I go through, there's 3 different things that I do to sharpen my images because I was getting really frustrated in the beginning that it's like all my photos seem a little blurry to me. And it's like, this is a really good camera with a really good lens. They shouldn't be blurry.
Yeah.
And so then, through trial and error and trying to figure this thing out, I run it through 3 different little steps to ultimately get it sharp and pretty sharp. I mean, I don't know that I could claim being as sharp as yours. I mean, that thing's pretty badass.
Well, man, it's funny that you mentioned that because there are a lot of photos that have taken me just hours to do because they had so much content, like I keep coming to this Pirates of the Caribbean one, but it's just one that I did recently that I knew it. I held off on doing it because I knew it was going to take a very, very long time. It's like you've got Jack Sparrow, you've got the waves, you've got sharks inside the water, you've got ships firing at each other on top of the waves, and like all this stuff, just all this content. And it's funny to me because some of my favorite images are the ones that literally hardly anything was done to it.
Right.
Like the Batman image. It was just a super close-up shot, cutting off the forehead. I think it might have even been cutting off the chin. I'd have to look at it to even see now. Just the batarang close to his eye. And literally it probably took me, I don't know, a minute or two to get the background out because like it was already so close up. There wasn't much background there.
Right.
And, dropping in a dramatic sky, throwing in some fire ember effects and then of course just doing some retouching from there. But it was just, for the most part, a very simple image. Like I think that I did like a series. It was like there was a Batman image like that, a Robin image like that, and a Wonder Woman image like that. They're super close up. And all three of those I probably knocked out, within, I don't know, the time it would normally take for me to do like one image. I think I did all three of those in that same amount of time.
That's crazy.
Because they were just simple images, but like you said, they were sharp and they were just, I'm like, man, that catches my eye.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I need to do more close-up shots like that,
There you go. That's awesome. I think it's really incredible. It really is a really nice, thing to have there. You're also, the Wonder Woman one is very sharp like that too. So you have a lot of images that are very sharp, very vibrant colors. I mean, you do amazing work. All right. So I want to ask you real quick, what's been your biggest struggle in doing all of this or getting to where you are at today?
Oh man. I think the biggest struggle, through all of this, I think just in the world of photography in general, is that everything is just so expensive.
Right.
I honestly think that is the reason why I do composite photography, is because I never had, and really honestly, I still don't, but I never really had the budget to buy all of these fancy backgrounds. I never had the budget to buy all of this, fancy gear or anything. As a matter of fact, the gear that I started out with, a good friend of mine from Mississippi, her name is, well, we call her AJ, but her name is Judy. And she was in photography. She was getting out of photography. And it may have just been for the same reason that it's like, hey, this is a lot of upkeep. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like photography is expensive. And, and so she was basically getting rid of her gear, like studio lights and, a 5D with a 70 to 200 millimeter lens and like just which is what I still use. Like for that Batman shot, I use that lens for it.
That's funny.
And so, yeah. And she was literally, I was like, well, what do you want for this? Cause this has gotta be like, I don't know, like somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 worth of stuff. This is a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you can just give me $2,500 and you can just kind of pay me as you go. Like, just give me a little bit each month. I'm fine with that. I'm just like, me too. Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. and so, yeah, I kind of like inherited my stuff from a family friend and just kind of got to, like a bill, just kind of pay it off as I went. And of course, from there, I've shot weddings and done other things, and I've bought, new gear. I shoot with a Canon 5D Mark III now. But even that 70 to 200 millimeter lens, I mean, it's a great lens. Yeah. It's still a great lens. I still use it like every time I shoot.
Yeah.
And so, I think finances has always been the hard struggle for me. And like I was saying before, I think that's ultimately why I wanted to get into composite photography. Number one, just because I was so captivated by it. I would see images like from Joel Grimes. I remember when I saw Joel Grimes work, I'm like, that stuff is just amazing. Yeah. I want to do it. And I think Calvin Hollywood was like, he's a German photographer. He was really influential because he did a lot of superhero stuff too. And so I was like, well, I mean, I don't have to buy necessarily anything to create these backgrounds, unless cost money to buy the stock images, but I mean, there are sources online that offer that for free, if you want to play around with that kind of stuff. And that's really, I'm like, well, I can start making these things and it doesn't cost me anything.
Yeah.
And I think that is, so that one of my biggest struggles has really kind of led me to what I'm doing,
Right.
And,
right.
Yeah.
Cool. I was going to show you here that my first camera was a 5D as well. I got that in a trade. I bought it brand new. A friend of mine said, I want you to do some video for me, because I was doing a little bit of video at the time, just with like a little flip cam. And I said, okay, well, I can, but I need a professional camera. And back when I got this, they were filming the like episodes of House MD with the 5Ds. And so, okay, well, I need a 5D then. And so he dropped like $6,000 for me, bought me this camera. I did a couple videos and then that was it, and had a camera. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, my shutter has gone out on this damn thing. That's my one complaint with Canon. And then, so I had to buy a 6D, and that's what I use now, just a 6D, the same lens. I think it's a 24-105 lens that I use. Yeah, and it works perfect. But I was exactly like you. I didn't have lights or anything in the beginning. So, I had to get really creative with how I lit my, images and my subjects for the composites that I created. And so I don't think you need hardly anything other than just a camera, a lens, and a computer with Photoshop.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you can do with just that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It really is amazing. So now that I know your biggest struggle, tell me what your biggest success has been.
I'm really proud of this. So I use Paul C. Buff Einstein lights, and when I was doing the senior photography thing, that's when I got introduced to alien bees and those lights and everything. But so I've really kind of always worked with Paul C. Buff lights,
right?
And so I love their gear. I love to use their stuff. And when I started popping out these images, I would just tag them in everything. And eventually it paid off, because their marketing director contacted me and was like, hey, we love your work, and we're doing this How I Got the Shot series with Tether Tools. And we would love to feature you in it.
Nice.
For their insight and inspiration guide, and how you can talk about how I got the shot. And of course, we do a video series on it. And I think the series was Digital Tech or something like that. But anyway, and so we rented Vine Studios out in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Awesome studio, just amazing. We just spent half the day there, and they're like, yeah, you can shoot whatever you want. And so I was thinking, okay, what have I done that I haven't done before that's just out there? And I was thinking of all kinds of stuff. My first idea was to do like the milk dress thing that I forgot. It's RM Light Studios, but I forgot his real name. But he's over in the UK, I believe. Right. I was like, I want something cool like that. And of course, him using Paul C. Buff lights as well. I'm like, well, that might be a conflict of interest. Right. I was like, well, maybe we'll stay away from that. And I was like, you know what? I do superheroes. That's what got me noticed by them.
Exactly.
So I'm just going to keep it in the superhero, arena. And I'm like, what do you love to do? And I kind of took it back to what I've always loved and what I've always known. I'm just like, man, I love Spider-Man. I grew up on Spider-Man. I feel like he's the most relatable of the superheroes, or at least to me. He's young. He has struggles. He's dealing with the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he's a photographer.
And he's a photographer.
And I've always just loved that storyline with Peter Parker and back in the day. And so anyway, I was like, man, I'm just gonna do the Spider-Verse. There's a cool comic book cover that I wanted to recreate. And I know as far as marketing and timing goes, it was perfect, because like the PS4 game was just coming out, Venom had just come out, and then the movie Into the Spider-Verse was coming out. So I'm like, actually, this is what started out as something that I just wanted to do. I was like, it actually might be kind of smart for me to do this, because everything seems to be Spider-Man right now. And then Avengers was out, and Spider-Man was in it, And so I'm like, yeah, let's do that. So I called up a couple of friends. I'm like, hey, we got this project going on with this lighting company that I use, and they're wanting to feature me in this. And yeah, let's do this. And of course, everybody, of course, their first reaction was like, of course, yes, absolutely, let's do this. Not realizing that I'm probably going to work their butt off, making them jump and do all these crazy poses, in costume, making them sweat.
That's awesome.
But yeah, it was great. We had a great time, and then we released the video the same day that the Into the Spider-Verse movie came out.
Nice.
To kind of coincide with all of that and just synergy.
Yeah.
And then even from there, like when the movie came out, like we all as a group went to the theater together,
Cool.
and they came in costume and like took pictures with kids, and I came out and took pictures with them and everything, and then we all just sat down. It was my first time to ever go to an AMC theater, so with the reclining seats and all that stuff, and of course we got to do it free because we were like marketing, the movie.
Right.
And whatnot. And it was just such a great experience. So I really look at that as such a huge highlight for me, just because I've always thought so much of Policy Buff, and the fact that they thought so much of me to reach out to me.
That's awesome.
I thought that was great. And so I'm still tickled about it. So
that's awesome. I love hearing that. Great. All right. So real quick, before we get off here, I got a couple more questions for you. And that is, what composite photographer or digital artist, if you will, I kind of lump them all in the same, but who inspires you?
Man, well, definitely Auntie.
Yeah.
Definitely Auntie. Yeah, just because I think any person that you invest money in to learn what they know, and spend countless hours watching their videos. I think it's like 8 hours worth of content, and I've watched it more than once. So.
Nice.
You definitely get accustomed to seeing their face, hearing their voice, getting to know their story and their work. And then it's just all that much sweeter when they actually video chat with you and you're like, hey, you're talking to me this time. So yeah, I think Auntie's great. And, and I look up to him and some of the photographers I had mentioned earlier. I think Joel Grimes was really my first introduction into this whole, composite photography scene,
right?
And I liked hearing his story. I always loved how his images were so desaturated, and I was just like, why? I like that. It's very moody. It's very, but why are they always desaturated? It turns out he's colorblind.
Right.
That's why. And I was just like, oh, well, that makes total sense. And then Calvin Hollywood, I loved his work, and I remember buying his Calvinize book and CD and learning about how he does what he does. And I'm sure if I sat here, I could go on and on, because there's so many other photographers that I know of now, especially in the cosplay area, that I just think are it blows my mind.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome to see that you respect and you're a fan of all these other photographers or, artists as well. I've talked to some people sometimes where they don't even really pay any attention to what's going on out there, or really pay attention to other photographers and what they're doing. And I'm like, I don't know how you can't. I mean, it's such an amazing art form. Why would you not? Right.
Yeah. And it inspires me to, kind of want to push up my game a little bit, because I know that these guys are putting out stuff that's just stellar. And even now in my own mind, I'm like, man, I'm not as good as them. Like, they're just so awesome. Yeah. But then they'll come to me and be like, man, I love your work. I'm just like, really? Like, I'm a fan of you. You're a fan of me? Like, that doesn't make sense, but it's so, so it's like you geek out because you find out that, hey, you're fans of each other. And so. Yeah,
that's awesome. So for our listeners, how can they connect with you and find you online?
Sure. Yeah. I was doing a photography event the other day, and when I came home, my wife was like, hey, I built you a website. And so, again, I love my wife. She's awesome. She's amazing. But yeah, you can go to my website, which is www.ryansimsphotography.com. Easy for me to remember because it's my name, but if you have a hard time remembering my name,
I'll put the links in the show notes. Don't worry.
Yeah. I always say Ryan like the steakhouse and Sims like the video game. And people tend to be, oh, yeah, I can remember that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, RyanSimsPhotography.com. All of my, social media is connected from there. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook.
Awesome.
So you can always find me there.
We will put all those links below. Dude, I really appreciate your time and coming on the show and being so open, about your journey and where you're at today. And I have to say, dude, I am amazed by the work that you're creating. I love it.
Man, I really appreciate that. And man, I love your work too. Yeah, I went and checked out your stuff, man. I'm just like, dude, this guy's amazing as well. It's so cool to see other people who do this type of photography. Because it really is just so amazing, the things that you can create.
Yeah, the funny thing is, I look at other photographers, if they do the type of work I do, it's like, okay. I really love looking at photographers that are doing something completely different than I am, and I'm always a little jealous.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny to me because people will, I've known people who will look at, what we do.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, well, it's like that's cheating, or it's like it's not really photography. Photography is what we have it packaged as over here.
Yeah, whatever.
And whatever. I'm just like, but why do that when you can do something crazy and just like, that you can't just create with just a camera. It's like it takes all this other stuff, and you're, it's, to me, it's just an explosion of creativity.
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many of these things I do. I'm always amazed at how they look afterwards. That you were able to take something what did not exist, and then you created an image that is completely new to the world and exists now. I love that process.
Exactly. I think it works the same way with TV and movies. Mm-hmm. I argue with my father-in-law about this all the time. He's just like, that's not realistic. I'm like, but why deal with realistic? Why would I watch something that I could just go down the street and watch? It's like when you've got something that's epic and, exactly. Like Star Wars or something like that. It's like, that's not cheesy to me. I think that's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome. I appreciate your time, buddy. I'll let you go so you can get back to your evening with your wife, your awesome wife.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, thank you so much, man. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, thank you for putting up with my geekiness. So
you are a geek.
Yeah.
And there you have it. My interview with Ryan Sims from Ryan Sims Photography. What a cool guy, and what an amazing composite photographer and digital artist. I'm telling you, this guy is just the coolest. Anyway, today we talked about what inspired him to become a cosplay photographer or artist. All right. So we all get into what we do because we were inspired by something. That was his, and I love that. Also, we talked about how he does some of the things that he does, some of the incredible things that he creates. And I learned a lot from that. It's really cool. I love when photographers, composite photographers, digital artists do their own photography. That takes you to another level, in my opinion. You are at another level when you're doing your own photography versus just using a bunch of stock photography stuff. Also, we talked about getting started in cosplay photography, and that really, again, applies to just about anybody doing any kind of art and how to get started into that. All right, so next week, don't forget, we're going to be talking about the struggles with my creative mind and business, all right? So we're going to talk about what I struggle with the most as not only a creative person, but as a creative person who makes money at being creative. So that's going to be a really cool episode. Also, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Photillustrator. That's P-H-O-T Illustrator. And then subscribe to me on YouTube, or not, well, do that. Go ahead and subscribe to me on YouTube, but also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher if you're on one of those Android devices, so you can connect with every episode that comes out. And don't forget, leave a darn iTunes review. It helps. It really does. Also, lastly here, you can get all this information, all the links that you need to Ryan Sims over on the show notes at Photillustrator.com/episode 006. For those of you who don't know how to spell episode, that's EPISODE. SODE006. I'm just kidding. I know you all know how to spell episode. All right, so now let's go make a difference, and I'll see you next week.